All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to connect some dots today between two huge topics, the health of our planet and, well, the food that's on our plates. And trust me, this is a story that affects every single one of us, every single day. So what does a heat wave have to do with the price of your bread? It sounds like a weird riddle, right? But honestly, it might be one of the most important questions we can ask right now. The answer? Well, it's not simple. But it uncovers this really powerful kind of hidden link between the weather report and your grocery bill.
And that's exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to trace that connection, we're going to follow the thread from way up in the atmosphere right down to your kitchen table.
And a chain reaction is the perfect way to think about it. Seriously, one thing happens and it sets off the next, which sets off the next. It's like a domino effect. So let's walk through that chain link by link and see how this whole thing fits together. All right, first things first, the first link in our chain. Before we can even get to the food part, we've got to understand what's fundamentally changing with our climate. Think of these as the core ingredients in a whole new recipe for our planet.
So what does that actually mean? Well, for starters, we're talking about more heat waves, and they are intense. They stress out everything from cornfields to cattle. Then there's the rain. It's just all over the place, totally unpredictable. Sometimes you get way too little, and you've got a drought. Other times, you get way too much, and everything's flooded. And on top of all that, you've got these super severe storms that can literally wipe out a farmer's entire year of work in just a few hours.
And there's actually a name for all this stuff: climate drivers. It's a really important way to think about it because these aren't just random weather events, They are the direct forces that are completely changing the rulebook for how we grow our food.
Okay, so we've got the drivers. We know what's causing the problem. Now for the next link in the chain. What do these pressures actually do to our food supply? I mean, how does a heat wave way up in the atmosphere actually cause stress down on the farm?
And this is where it really hits home. The numbers are, well, they're pretty startling. Take a look. For every single degree of warming, we see these major drops in how much of our most basic crops we can grow. A 7.4% drop in maize. That isn't just a statistic. That's a massive, massive hit to a crop that feeds billions, both people and animals. And it's the same story for wheat and rice, which are, the foundation of what so many of us eat every day.
This quote from Dr. Rosenzweig at NASA just nails it. This isn't some far-off, distant problem anymore. As that data shows, it is literally in the fields and it is on our plates right now.
But, it's not just about corn and wheat, not by a long shot. That's really just the tip of the iceberg. This pressure is being felt across the entire food system, and sometimes in ways you might not even expect.
I mean, think about your morning coffee, the very specific places in the world that are perfect for growing those amazing beans. Those areas are actually shrinking as it gets warmer. The same thing's happening with wine grapes. And what about livestock? Well, heat stress means dairy cows make less milk, and for chickens, a bad heat wave can be deadly. Then you look at the oceans. They're warming up, and that's throwing the whole marine food web out of whack, which threatens the fish we eat. It's a strain on the entire system.
And here's a crucial point. This strain doesn't hit everyone the same way. Not at all. The threat looks totally different depending on where you live. For example, in a lot of sub-Saharan Africa, the biggest enemy is extreme drought. It just devastates farms that depend on rain. But then you go over to South and Southeast Asia, and it's the complete opposite problem. There, it's flooding and sea level rise that threaten to just wash away the rice paddies that feed hundreds of millions of people.
And that brings us to the final link in our chain. And honestly, this might be the one that feels the most personal to all of us, what it means for our wallets. Because all of that pressure we just talked about on the farm, it creates this economic ripple effect that you can feel all the way to the checkout line at the grocery store.
So how does that journey work? Well, let's trace it. It all starts with something like a drought in a big grain-producing country. Step 1. That immediately means there's less grain available for the whole world. Step 2. And, it's basic economics, right? When supply drops, but everyone still needs it, the price goes up. That's step 3. And finally, that higher cost for the raw grain, it gets passed down the line. So you end up paying more for your bread, your pasta, and even your meat because so much of that grain is used to feed livestock.
And look, for some of us, a small price hike might just be annoying. But for millions and millions of people, it's a full-blown crisis. We're talking about families who already spend most of their money just on food. So when prices swing up and down like this, it becomes impossible to plan, and it can literally be the difference between having food on the table and going hungry.
It creates this really cruel irony. The very countries getting slammed the hardest by climate disasters are often the same ones that then have to pay these higher prices for imported food. It's a double whammy, a double burden, and it just makes global inequality worse
and puts food security at risk for so many.
So we followed this chain all the way from the atmosphere to the economy. And it leaves us staring at a pretty big question about what comes next.
If there is one thing to take away from all this, it's this. The connection is real. It's undeniable. Our food system isn't something separate from the environment. It is completely, fundamentally tangled up with the health of our planet. What happens up there, in the atmosphere, has a direct line to what ends up on our plates.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The system that feeds all of us, it's already changing. It's under a ton of pressure. So the real question isn't if it's changing, but whether our appetite for finding solutions is strong enough to keep up.